Hi, grade 9s. Today we are going to compare and order decimals. So let's start doing that. Like we did before with fractions, we're going to use the less than symbol, the greater than symbol, or the equal to symbol in order to make each statement true. So we'll look at the first question here. 2.85, 2.58, or if we want to say them correctly, 2 and 85 hundredths and 2 and 58 hundredths. Which one's bigger? It may be easier to order these decimals if we look at them side by side. So if I wrote this decimal over here, 2.58, and we have to look at them from left to right. So if we look at them from left to right, let me get my magic pen out here. Yeah, and if we look at them from left to right, we see that the first digit in both of them is a 2. So if the first digit's a 2 for both, that means they're both the same. Then they both have a decimal. Then the next digit is an 8 on top and a 5 down below. And of course, 8 is bigger than 5. So that means that 2 and 85 hundredths is greater than or larger than 2 and 58 hundredths. Okay, let's try the next one. So we have 6 and 11 hundredths and 6 and 1/10. So again, I'm going to put 6 and 1/10 below. Now it might be tough for us to compare two numbers where they have a different number of place value digits after the decimal. So if that bothers you, or maybe you might want to do this to make it easier, after like a decimal stops, we can add any number of zeros without changing the question. So I'm going to add a 0 there. And now that's 6 and 10 hundredths. Still means the same as 6 and 1/10. Now, if we compare them, we see that here they're both 6s. Here they're both 1s and the decimals are lined up. And then we have to go to that second decimal place and we see that there's a 1 here. So therefore 6 and 11 hundredths is greater than 6 and 10 hundredths. And we'll do this one more time because we've got 12 and 88 hundredths and we're comparing it to 12 and 875 thousandths. And once again, we run into a question where there's a different number of decimal places after each of those numbers. So in order to make it even, we can add a 0 on the end of this, and that might help us. So we could bring out the magic pen again if we were so inclined. And both have 1s in the first spot, both have 2s in the second spot, both have decimal places, both have 8s. We have to go right here to see a difference, and we see that the bottom number is larger because 8 is bigger than 7. So therefore, 12 and 875 thousandths is less than 12 and 88 hundredths. So now we're going to do a couple more questions here. This example says for us to write the decimals in order from smallest to greatest. And we're given 3 different decimal numbers. So we're going to take those decimal numbers and we're going to look at them. Again, I think it would be beneficial for us to write them almost on top of one another so that we can best compare them. And 2 of these numbers have 2 decimal places, one has 1 decimal place. So we can generate a second decimal place for 6 and 4/10 to make it look like 6 and 40 hundredths. So now all the numbers have 2 decimal places. So it'll be way easier to look at these numbers now. We'll look here. They all have a 6 to lead off with, so we can't tell a difference there. We look at the second digit, and we have a 4, a 4, and a 0. A 4, a 4, and a 0. So if we're writing these from smallest to greatest, the 0 is less than 4. So what that tells us is that this number here is our smallest number. So we can write that out here. Now we have to figure out which one's our next smallest number. And all we need to do is look at the hundredths position. And if we look at the hundredths position, here we have a 2 on top and a 0 on the bottom. 0 is less than 2. So because of that, we know that 6.40 is less than 6.42 or 6 42/100ths. So if we're writing these in order from smallest to greatest, this is the order in which they go. Be careful when you're doing a question like this, because the question could easily be asking you to write them in order from greatest to smallest. And in that case, we would write them in the opposite order. So definitely pay attention, because you might be going from smallest to greatest or greatest to smallest. And we have one last question that we're going to do here. We have some kind of an oval, and we've got 3 numbers in the oval. And what we're going to do is we are going to circle the largest number and cross out the smallest. So just like above, we are in essence ordering these numbers. We got to find out where the smallest one lives and where the largest one lives. Okay, now what I can do is I can take a copy of each of these numbers, and I'm going to put them on top of one another so that we can do that nice little comparison. Okay, because I find it's way easier to order these if we can actually see them. And we see that one of the numbers has 1 decimal place, one is 2, one is 3. So in order to make this easier to read, I'm going to add zeros so that they all have 3 decimal places. So if we look at the first first number, we have 1s everywhere. So that's not incredibly helpful. Let's see. See, we got 1s everywhere. And we got 7s everywhere. Still nothing to help us with. We got decimals everywhere. And whenever we compare decimals, we should always line up the decimal places. Always, always, always line up your decimal places. Decimal places should be right on top of one another if we're writing the numbers vertically. After the decimal, we got 3s everywhere. So again, we've got no real help here. But we go to the second decimal place and we do have a little bit of help, because we've got a 0, and the 0 is of course the smallest one. The 0 is the smallest one, so 17.3 or 17 3/10 is our smallest one. So we will be crossing out that one, but we also see a 5, which is bigger than 3, so 17.35 is our largest one. So we can circle the largest one, 17.35, and cross out the smallest one. Now, if you're doing a question like this on a quiz, which you very well could be tomorrow, please, when you're crossing out the decimal, cross it out once or twice. You don't need to scribble it out, because I still need to be able to read it to make sure you're picking the right number. All right, guys, that's all for me. So you'll get some practice questions to work on, and work on them, and they'll help you get ready for the quiz that you'll be having next period.